What's up, everybody, and welcome to Week 6, this 2024 NFL season. Here at Cherry Pickers, coming back for another episode to give you our best bets of the week. There is a game on right now. The Jacksonville Jaguars and the Chicago Bears are playing right now in London. And Chicago's really laying it on Jacksonville. I would not want to be a Jags fan right now. I don't know what's wrong with that team. They can't put it together. They can't stop throwing interceptions or fumbling or having penalties at the wrong time. So obviously we don't have a pick for that game, but we do have some for the rest of the day. We've got some picks, and we're going to review our picks from last week. First off, system. It was the first week for the system. What is the system? It's just something that we put together we add in numbers, we take things out, we add things in, we spit out efficiency, and with that, we have picks that are spit out for games, and the games can only be considered if we have a starting quarterback for 4 games. So any game that has a starting quarterback without 4 games, we do not include them. The picks went 4 and 5 last week. And it kind of went the way that I expected it to go because week 1 is usually hit or miss, but we did have some bad beats in those 5 losses. And I do have one of the cherry pickers who are going to join us today. It's Ryan Big Tree Oliver.
Yeah.
Tree, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm all right. Trying to get my headphones to work. I don't know what's wrong. I've never used this app before.
Yeah, this is a pretty simple app. Hopefully you can hear us. Everybody home can hear you if I can hear you. So we're just going to go over the picks from last week to start. The first one, and Ryan, you'll be able to chime in on this. The system like the Steelers minus 2.5 points. I talked about how the offensive line had a great advantage for the running game and how they should be able to control the clock. And the defensive line should be able to get to Prescott. The Steelers ended up losing that game. They were winning with 20 seconds left before they gave up a touchdown on 4th down. That's a tough, bad beat. But Justin Fields he threw 27 passes for 131 yards total. He had 4.8 yards per attempt. That's not good at all. What were your thoughts from that game, Tree?
I went to bed early.
Yeah. Well, you probably. It's a good thing you did because that outcome.
I'll be honest. I did go to bed early, but I just think that the Steelers' offense is like really limited when Najee Harris is the only running back. I think a lot of people want to blame the offensive line for that, but to me, their offense looked night and day different when either Jaylen Warren was playing, or I'm trying to remember his name, the one they got from Atlanta.
Yeah. Their other running backs do look better, especially Warren. He's the guy that stands out to you when he gets the ball. He just looks like he's more dynamic. Najee, he kind of just gets what's there, doesn't get you much else. He's reliable. He stayed healthy for as much pounding as he's taken in his career. He's not had many injuries or.
He's a late game back, and that's good when you have a lead.
Right, exactly.
But
and that's the problem.
They
you
just
don't get out to big
about
leads with this team.
They just haven't been that team for like the last. We're not going to get into that, but they're just not. And to me, they're just like really player dependent in order for basically the line to look like they're successful or the quarterback situation.
Yeah. And coming from a betting perspective, we had that game in the bag. It came down to the end of the game, I believe, on a 4th down. That's a tough pill to swallow when it's one play that separates you from cashing and not. And I keep reading that there's no way that Justin Fields loses his starting job to Russell Wilson. But if you're throwing 27 passes and you're finishing the day with 131 yards, I don't know how you can stay the starting quarterback for very long doing that. I know it's Pittsburgh. They're loyal. They don't like to bench guys. They don't like to cut guys. It took them how long to get rid of Matt Canada when they should have got rid of him after about half of the season.
One thing is, though, I don't know that applies in this situation.
Wow.
Because in those situations, Matt Canada was a guy who kind of, in their eyes, worked his way up to the offensive coordinator, and like that's a big move to fire him. But they haven't even officially named Fields the starter yet. So with that in consideration, I think that normally I'd 100% agree, but because they have not said yes, he's our starter, yes, he's the guy we're going to go with for the year, I would not be surprised to see Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I mean, he's going to be a better passer. There's just no two ways about it. He's more experienced, and he's mobile in the pocket. He'll run and get you a first down if it's there. But the guy that we saw in Denver last year, Wilson, was starting to get back to who he was. He was on pace for around 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, and like 7 interceptions or something like that, and it just didn't work out for him because Sean Payton didn't want him there. So he ended up getting benched, and the rest is history. So we'll see what happens with that. We lost that game. The second game was the Cleveland game, where it was Washington -3 playing Cleveland. I said that was a system pick. I personally didn't feel great about it because I thought that Cleveland defensive line would have at it with Washington's offensive line, and that didn't happen either. Washington took care of business, and they actually I don't even know how to say it other than dominated Cleveland in that game. I mean, they did anything that they wanted on offense. They came through in a way bigger way than I thought. It just seems like everything has opened up for this team, and everybody that touches the ball is doing something good with it. It wasn't close. Deshaun Watson finished with 20. This is even worse than Fields, 28 attempts for 125 yards passing. That's 4.46 yards per attempt. Your yards per attempt should be double that. I mean, it should be at least a couple more yards added on to that. It's just crazy that these guys are starting quarterbacks in the NFL, throwing almost 30 times, but not even throwing for 150 yards. That's tough for any NFL team to overcome and to win games with. I don't know how Cleveland's going to go forward from here. I've seen some lifelong Cleveland fans who just told me they're not watching anymore. I even saw one guy I know, diehard Cleveland fan, who says he's now a fan of another team, and he showed himself wearing another team's shirt and hat. I don't blame him at this point. Ryan, I know you got a lot of opinions about that Cleveland team. I don't think you would disagree, would you? Can't hear you, buddy. I know Dree has has some feelings about that Cleveland Browns team, and they're just not performing really well right now. But Washington did cover that -3. They covered it easy, and they're playing like one of the best teams in the NFL right now at this point. So we won that game. The next game we had was Buffalo getting 1.5 at Houston. Man, talk about a game that got blown. Talk about a game that really Buffalo had a chance to send it to overtime. Sean McDermott ended up calling some passing plays at the end instead of just running the ball, making them use their timeouts, and going to overtime. Yep, you're good now. Yep. You want to go back to that Cleveland game? Go for it.
Yeah, sorry. I had I had to switch to the app so that it worked in my headphones.
Oh, okay.
That's why I didn't before.
You're good.
So, anyways, what I feel about Cleveland is that if I were you, I'd just completely take them out of the system. You can't even use that. You can't even use it to gauge them because they don't even have NFL quarterbacking potential.
It doesn't look like it, does it?
Does that sound right? I didn't know if I was saying that right. It's just like I just don't think they have a guy right now that can play NFL level quarterback. And at least in Deshaun Watson, they don't.
Yeah, he's just I don't know. He's not playing well. He's not. I mean, I guess he'll show a quarter here and there where he plays well, and then that's about all they get out of him. You and I have talked about this on our group chat with the Cherry Pickers that Bill O'Brien, when he was in Houston, he had to go to the Clemson playbook, his college playbook, because he couldn't get the NFL playbook down. And then he did that, and I think he did that before the season even started that year, his rookie year, because he saw it in training camp. And what happens last year when Flacco came into Cleveland? Immediately, the offense started moving, and Flacco knew how to run an offense in the NFL playbook. Stefanski's a pretty good coach with a good offensive mind, and I'm sure he expects a lot. But they're so tied now to Watson because they're paying him over $200 million guaranteed dollars. It's tough. But I guess if you're paying him, just pay him. Throw somebody else in there, even if it's not for very long. Get Winston in there, see if something happens.
I honestly don't know how. In my opinion, I could, I'm not Stefanski, but I don't know how this team even goes forward. If I'm Stefanski, I probably resign after this year. I mean, seriously, if
I'm coach of the year in the NFL,
and I'm not allowed to make personnel decisions on who I should play, then I don't need to be your coach. I mean, it's that simple. If I was him, all that's going to happen is they're going to ruin his career.
I'm with you. It's like he's kind of. Who knows what's happening in practice? Who knows what's happening in these coaches' meetings? Who knows what's happening when they're watching film? But if his hands are tied and the owners are saying, "Look, Watson's playing, and that's it," and that's what he said in the press conferences. We're not changing our starting quarterback. And if his hands are tied like that, then what do?
You have to leave. You have to walk. You cannot continue to coach there.
Yeah.
How do you walk into that building, face those dudes that are supposed to be listening to you, and all of them know that all they have to do, not really, but in theory, all you have to do is go to the owner, and that supersedes you.
Yeah.
You lose all credibility. And so, I think if he doesn't have the power to switch Watson, that he needs to leave that place. If he has to go be an offensive coordinator for 2 years until he can go back to head coaching, that's better than another.
Somebody would snatch him up quick. There's no doubt about it.
They would. They would. Even if, I'm just saying, if it came to that, that's what I would do. Yeah. For the fact that people talking about him being fired is one of the craziest things I've ever heard. Because if you've watched anything involving Cleveland over the last 3 years, Stefanski is the best thing that they have. Yeah. You want to say Nick Chubb, you want to say Myles Garrett, fine. But to me, it's been Stefanski.
I mean, he took them to the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They beat their arch rival in the playoffs. They played that Chiefs team right to the end. I know that I can imagine if you're a Cleveland fan, you don't watch Tampa Bay highlights. You do not watch those highlights. You can't because of just how good Baker Mayfield's going. But at the same time, if you're Cleveland, you got a guy like Watson who had some amazing seasons. His last season that he started in Houston was unreal. They were a terrible team, and he was throwing for 4,500 yards, like 33 touchdowns and 5 picks. He played like an MVP, but if they had won 10 or 11 games, he would have been the NFL MVP that year. But if you didn't know, do you not do your homework, that the guy can't memorize an NFL playbook? I don't know. It's a tough situation to be in. It's got to be sickening. They're so stuck. Nobody's going to trade for him. You can't cut him. I mean,
bro, it's so wild because like the level of blunder that trade was. I mean, like if you go back, and I know you're a San Francisco fan, not to pick on San Francisco fans, but a lot of people would say, "Oh, okay, well they did that trade for a quarterback and it didn't work out, and they got lucky because they got Mr. Irrelevant." No, they didn't get lucky. You know how I feel about that. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they bailed themselves out. But even still, they lost 1 season's worth of draft capital.
Basically, I mean, it took a couple years to get a first-round pick, but I think they went 2 straight years without a first-round pick. But they've hit on other things, and when you're paying a guy that took you to an overtime play away from a Super Bowl win, you're paying him $400,000 a year.
And for the negative press they got on that deal, pales in comparison. And you could say, "Oh well, look what Carolina did." At one point, they had Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold competing for a starting job on their roster, and now they have Andy
Carolina.
Dalton. So they
Yeah.
blew it because, well, no, they just used a draft pick that didn't work out.
Right.
So when you go to Cleveland, 3 years, and not just not just any 3 years. 3 years of the most talent. No, you can't fault them for the COVID part. That part we're not going to fault.
No.
But it happened. It happened. So you know what I mean. So 3 years of the most talent-rich drafts there's probably ever been.
Right.
Every team in the NFL got an All-Pro during that time, except for Cleveland.
Right.
Like, so when you look back on it, like, dude, this is like beyond the Herschel Walker trade.
Right. Right.
This is the worst trade in the history of sports.
That Herschel Walker trade was one for the ages. I mean, Dallas got some guys that helped them win 3 Super Bowls, but I get what you're saying. It's just it was a huge trade that just hasn't worked out. If I'm a Cleveland fan, I'm probably just waiting for like 3 years from now, and just saying whatever happens.
It's going to take that long.
It's not going to work out the way it is.
It ain't. It sucks because if they go into last year's playoffs with Baker Mayfield as their quarterback, they're a Super Bowl contender, if not one of the favorites. They
defense,
bro, they handled Baltimore with DTR at court. No, they had the XFL guy. They had the XFL guy and beat Baltimore's ass.
Yeah, they did. You're right.
Right. It's just crazy. It's just really crazy to think. And then now this, it's a mess. And, people say I'm hating on them.
Well, you're saying a lot of truths that are probably Cleveland fans don't want to hear, but a lot of them are realistic too. They know that this is the truth. And hey, if you're the front office, you took a chance. If you had not guaranteed so much money, it wouldn't be so bad right now. But with the 100% guaranteed contract, I mean, you can see that's never going to happen again.
That's the part I left out when I said the worst trade in sports history.
Because of the guaranteed money.
The guaranteed money. I left that part out. That I definitely needed to include that when I said that, because you're right. Dallas did get some Super Bowls out of that. So
right, yeah. So that was that game last week. Like I said, we lost to Buffalo, getting 1.5. Sean McDermott made a stupid call in late in the fourth quarter. He could have just ran the ball 3 times, burned all the timeouts that Houston had. Instead, he threw it 3 times. They punted, were able to get within field goal range, lost the game. Who knows if they went to overtime, they would have won. That was a 50-50 game. We won the Arizona game, getting 7.5 at San Francisco. They won outright. We took the Raiders, getting 3 at Denver. And there were a couple plays, 2 plays there that made a 17-point swing. Vegas was at like the 3-yard line and threw a 99 or 100-yard pick 6. You got a 14-point swing there. And then there was another time where Denver missed a field goal. Raiders would have got the ball back, but there was a flag, so they got to kick the field goal again from 5 yards closer and made it. And that game was just out of hand. We won the Giants game +7. They really controlled that game against Seattle. And then our last game was New Orleans, getting 5.5 at Kansas City. I didn't realize they had so many injuries, or I probably would not have even put that game up on the board. But that was week 1, 4-5 with the system, pretty normal. Week 1, you have the least amount of information that you're going to have all year with 4 games. It's supposedly going to get better, but we will see. All right, let's head to this week's picks. We're going to start.
Mac Jones in for Jacksonville right now.
Mac Jones is in. Oh, my God. That's another team that they might be the first, the next head coach firing there. I don't know. They got talent there. They've got a quarterback. They got a Super Bowl winning head coach. I don't know what's happening. They can't stop fumbling. They can't stop just getting penalties hold somebody on 3rd down and then they get a penalty. I don't know what's happening there, but if Mac Jones is in, that's not a good sign.
Not at all.
The Bears are playing really good football right now. If you're a Chicago Bears fan, you got to be happy. Let's get to this week's picks. Start here with Cleveland and Philadelphia. These are the system picks. I don't feel good about this one. The system likes Cleveland getting 8.5 at Philly. Philly's getting healthy right now. 8.5 is a ton of points. That's why it likes it. I don't know. Philly's getting both of their receivers back. A.J. Brown's coming back. Devontae Smith's coming back. And I believe their offensive line is healthy again. 8.5 points. Maybe we get a backdoor cover there. Maybe they're up by 14, 20. and Cleveland comes back and scores a couple touchdowns and makes it a 7-point game. I don't know about that.
I'm staying away
I'm just
from
not sure.
anything Cleveland. I'm staying away from anything. I'm staying away from anything Cleveland.
Yeah, I hear you. The second game it likes is Washington getting 7 points at Baltimore. Now, this matchup is not good for Washington. Washington's defense is not good at all, and they struggle against the run. Baltimore, the best running team in the NFL. But a touchdown's a lot, and we see Jayden Daniels just – I mean, I don't know about you, Trey. You see this guy throw the ball, and it's like, is this real, or is this just like a run this kid's going on? Because they didn't punt for 2 weeks straight. He's throwing like 80% completion percentage, and he's not dinking and dunking. He's chucking the ball down the field. I don't know, man. I don't know if this is a real team playing the way they're
here's the thing. I know you don't watch college as much as I do. It looks exactly like LSU last year. Like, exactly. It looks like he just took all of the uniforms, switched them to Commanders, and is doing literally the same thing. I mean, I thought that he was gonna fall off last year in college. So I feel the same way as you on that one. I thought last year, sooner or later, the bottom was gonna fall out.
Cliff Kingsbury's running the offense there. Everybody loves his offense. As a head coach, the guy's got a losing record. So I don't know that he's a head coach guy, but his offense with the right guys around can move the ball. And maybe he's just got the perfect pieces for that offense. I don't know, because their defense isn't that great. It's not good at all, actually. It's pretty bad. So the system likes Washington getting 7. Baltimore's Baltimore. Even though they started out the year with some losses, they're still Baltimore, and they're going to be fine. That's just the way that team goes. The next game here, LA Chargers at Denver. Denver's getting 3. The system likes Denver. Hey, this Denver team's playing well. The Chargers do get their tackles back, which could be the difference here because they were playing without both their starting tackles, and that kind of eliminates Denver's front, or should in theory. But, man, Sean Payton's doing a good job in Denver. I don't know what you think, Tree, but I think he's done a really excellent job so far.
I think that, I think between him and the way that Bo Nix has played, I wouldn't say like, oh, Bo Nix is lighting the world on fire, but he's just not messing up. You know what I mean? And honestly, that can take you a long way in Sean Payton's offense. Just don't mess up. I mean, so I think, I think they're for real. I mean, they actually had their moments last year with Russell Wilson. I think that if there had been a better relationship, like man to man, between those two, that season, that their season actually, they could have probably fought for a playoff spot last year.
Well, they beat Kansas City one time, and the other time they played them, they almost beat them. They were really close. Didn't they give up 70 points?
They did early in the season.
It was like after that, they played a lot better as the season went on.
Especially on defense.
Yeah, exactly. The defense is amazing.
Their defense played really well after that. I think that was like, hey, dude, we gave up 70 points. Like, that's not.
Well, I think the coaching staff and the players took that personal, as you should.
Especially when you have a guy like Patrick Surtain Jr.
Yeah. Oh, man, is he good? That kid is.
When you have a kid like that, there's no way that defense, your defense is going to be good at some point, and they are good.
Absolutely. And Jim Harbaugh, as somebody a fan of a team that Jim Harbaugh was a head coach of, to another person who's a fan of a team that Jim Harbaugh was a coach of, he's playing Jim Harbaugh football. They're running the ball, they're playing good defense, they're controlling the clock, they're not turning the ball over, and they're winning by
the hair of their fucking the seat of their pants. And that's why when I was talking to you about them at the beginning of the season, I was saying I think it's going to take a little bit longer than what people imagine, because the Harbaughs are culture guys.
Yeah,
like they know their X's and O's, but they're culture guys. They win, they out culture you. You know what I mean? Right. It's like every single person, from the equipment guy to the starting quarterback, is bought in, and that's when those, and you just cannot do that in a matter of a few months.
Oh yeah, you watch the 49ers of the early 2010s, or you've watched Michigan the last however many years. That's exactly right. Those players are bought in. They would lay down in traffic for Harbaugh. They all know their roles. It's a team game. They just don't have a lot of playmakers this year. They really don't there in LA.
And Baltimore's the same way. Baltimore's the same way.
Yeah.
Like they're like not the exact cult of personality that Jim is, but Baltimore's a buy-in team. When they're bought in, you can't beat them.
Right. Yeah.
You can't beat them.
Well, that'll be a good game to watch. That's a division game. It's in Denver. I saw a stat that teams playing their first game in Denver of the year always have trouble, especially at the beginning of the year. We'll see how that plays out. The next game is Detroit at Dallas. Detroit is a 3-point favorite. The system likes Dallas getting 3. I don't have much to say about this game. Dallas played a lot better game last week than I thought. Maybe they're starting to figure things out there compared to that.
I like it. Dallas beat them last year. Dallas was one of their toughest outs. And Dallas is just tailor-made type of team to play them tough. Just tailor-made for it. I mean, Dallas could be a team, honestly, that's the best in the NFL or the worst in the NFL, literally in the same week. Sometimes.
Yeah, true.
But against Detroit, I think they match up well. I like that. I like that one. I already took that one earlier.
The system has those two teams almost as completely equal teams. Okay, the next game, Cincinnati Bengals going to the New York Giants. Cincinnati's giving New York 3.5. The system likes the Giants. Not only does it like the Giants with the points, it thinks the Giants is a better team. That Giants team is underrated. I was criticizing them at the beginning of the year, but, man, they figured it out. They're playing great ball, and they're good in the trenches. Cincinnati has no pass rush whatsoever. Their defense is not very good at all. Giants team,
I took them on the system, and I took the money line. I think they're going to be I took them on the system, and I took the money line.
I think that this is a game that's kind of tailor-made for the Giants here. Now, Cincinnati's offense is playing amazing. They're playing great, but that Giants defensive line with Dexter Jackson is playing great. He's probably the best interior defensive guy there is in the NFL right now. So taking the Giants plus 3.5. And there is one other game that the system liked. It liked Buffalo -2 playing the Jets, but the Jets have a new head coach. So I'm taking that off the board.
Turnover season. Turnover season, bro.
It's a new head coach. You don't know, it's not necessarily a rule that we follow with the cherry pickers, but we probably should because you get a new head coach in there. You're getting a new philosophy, maybe. A lot of times interim head coaches don't change a lot because it's hard to do that in the middle of the season. But they have a new head coach and a new offensive coordinator, So what I'm betting is Aaron Rodgers is going to call the shots now. He's going to call the plays, and Ulbrich is going to kind of probably be hands off of the offense and just focus on the defense, which I still don't understand this firing of Robert Saleh.
I think it's ridiculous. Honestly, if I was going to touch that game, the only thing I would even be interested in is the under. There's no other reason to touch that game, dude.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo playing at the Jets. It's a division game. Josh Allen went 9 for 30 last week. I can imagine he's crawling out of his skin to get that game out of his memory, out of his history. But
which could be a bad thing for him. You know how I feel about that.
Yeah, he forces things. So you're right. That could be, and that Jets defense is tough. Both teams need this game. But I'm not going to make it an official pick. So to recap real quick, Washington +7, Cleveland +8.5, the Broncos +3, the Cowboys +3, the Giants +3.5. Those are the system picks this week. I don't feel great about any of them, but that's usually a good sign because when I feel great about something, it usually
the only one I really
just
like
me acting on emotion and not the numbers. This is nothing but the numbers, and numbers have no emotion.
No, the only one I really like is the Giants. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, I guess I do like that game.
There's no reason other than Joe Burrow why Cincinnati would be favored in that game.
And by favored more than a field goal on the road. I mean, exactly. Burrow is great. He's playing awesome football right now. He really is, but he doesn't play defense. And, Danny Dimes is not turning the ball over. They're running the ball great. And anybody who watched HBO this summer when they were on Inside the NFL, I'm drawing a blank on the name of that show, but you saw behind the scenes, and it really looked like the Giants. I mean, I'm sure every team looks like it behind the scenes, like they're doing everything they can. They're doing their homework. They're doing X, Y, and Z. But seeing that and then watching the first 2 weeks, I thought, man, HBO edited that just so you saw the good parts. But really, they just needed to kind of get into a flow of things. And this Giants team just keeps looking better and better. And that Malik Neighbors he's tough.
He's tough, dude. He's tough. I think Brian Dayball and Wink Martindale definitely had some issues last year. And as a Michigan fan, I'm starting to see why. I'm not going to say that Wink has, shit to bad or anything at Michigan, but he's kind of a personality. And Dayball's a personality. I actually kind of think that the Giants are who we thought they were 2 years ago. After they had that playoff win, what they were supposed to be last year, I think last year was a mess, and sometimes that happens. And I think this year is what they are. I'm not going to say that they're going to be a top tier playoff team, but they're in it for the NFC East.
They could be a wild card team for sure.
Yeah.
They could definitely be a wild card team. The system did not have a pick with the Steelers game because they're playing the Raiders, and the Raiders have a new quarterback this week, so we don't have the information on them. The Raiders, they've got controversy happen there with
Pittsburgh might be playing a new quarterback too.
Yeah. Devontae Adams, worst kept secret in the NFL, as he wants out. He hasn't been playing. I don't know what's going on there, but outside of him, they don't have a lot of playmakers. They got a good young tight end on the team, but I don't know. They're one of those teams that they're tough to figure out. And I don't know if you saw, Tree, that video where the head coach was like, yeah, we got some guys that were making business decisions. And that was pieced together with some guys on defense that you could see were literally trying not to get hit or hit people. You can't be a starting defensive player in the NFL and do that. So who knows about that Raiders team where it's they don't have to do that.
That sucks because I really like their coach, man. I really like Antonio Pierce and was rooting for him. And it's gonna fall on him. It's gonna fall on him. It's a mess there.
Yeah, the culture seemed to change for the better, but when you don't have a good quarterback and you've got one playmaker who doesn't want to be there on offense, they won a lot of games in the past on one or two guys really making plays. Max Crosby on the defensive end, and Derek Carr. He's never going to be Patrick Mahomes, but he's also never going to turn the ball over 5 times a game. So they would win on, making 1 or 2 plays and then not doing anything stupid.
And running the ball. And then here's what you do after you build that identity: you get rid of your running back, you get rid of the quarterback, you hire a new coach, and you say, hey man, make it happen. Right. That's great fucking ownership.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put any money on this Raiders team because you don't know what you're going to get out of them. And I can't imagine that the locker room is great with Adams holding out. He's never going to play another snap with Vegas unless something happens and they don't trade him and there's some clause that he's not going to, not going to be traded unless they agree to it. I don't know what his contract is. If he's got the no trade clause so he can pick, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there with that. But with Pittsburgh, we'll see. I mean, Justin Fields he does what he has to do and what's asked of him.
I'd like to see it work out.
I would too. See it work out. Everybody would. I think everybody roots for that guy. I think he's got a lot of fans in the NFL, wanted to see him do well in Chicago, and they want to see him do well now. But you got to be able to throw the ball down the field.
You do. And you do. And the things that I hated about his game, he's actually improved on. And it seems like some of the things that he kind of had, he regressed on. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. Can he figure it out? This is a great week for him to do that, though.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Arthur Smith seemed to be managing him and treading very lightly with him, not putting too much on his plate, not not
Yeah.
not pushing him too much. I know that opening game against Atlanta, they said you're not throwing in the middle of the field. You're going to the sidelines, and that's all he did because they didn't want to get beat by that really good safety there in Atlanta, Jesse Bates. He was not going to beat him, and so they're kind of just getting him to just here do this and do that, and then take off and run. But you can't win. Our buddy Jim Bailey, he was on the show last year. One of the cherry pickers. He's a great football mind there. He said the Steelers are the most average team you can ever think of. They don't lose games that they shouldn't. But when they should win a game, they don't in the end because they can't get up by enough points, because there's nothing there on offense to really be explosive. So they're going to have to do more if they want to win that division, and they want to get to the playoffs and get Tomlin another win.
Yeah, I'm hoping that maybe if Roman Wilson gets healthy, he could help in the passing game. I like that they've been definitely getting the tight ends a lot more involved. That's definitely helped.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's an uphill battle with a wide receiver position when you have the wide receivers that we have. Like they have George Pickens, who he's a top tier wide receiver, but he's not really a leader. I don't think. And
he quits on some plays too. They got him shown quitting on plays.
He's more vocal in a negative way than a positive way, and I don't think I think he's out after this year.
I don't blame you for thinking that. And I heard Devontae Adams, one of the teams that are interested is the Steelers, but man, that would be a big offseason for them to sign 2 free agent quarterbacks and a big free agent wide receiver. That is not Pittsburgh at all.
And it's just I don't think that they could afford him. I mean, if they get rid of Pickens after the year, possibly, but I don't think that's the way they want to go. I think that you'll see them take. I mean, they've taken pretty much everything else in the offense first with their first picks. I think this will be the year you see them go to wide receiver with first round.
Yeah,
it almost has to be
the case. That definitely could be the case, and that's the direction they need to go in. Real quick before we go any further, remember 1-800-GAMBLER is there as a resource for you for the information and resources you need if you feel like you have a gambling problem. My picks from last week did not do well. Full transparency, they did not do well. We were 12-8 on the year. Now we're 1 game under 500. Some really bad beats last week. Just going to go over them real quick. I had Jordan Mason over 18.5 carries. He had been over that every game this season. So what happens last week? The 49ers played the hottest game ever in Levi's Stadium. It was almost 100 degrees. So Kyle Shanahan becomes a different coach and subs in another guy to run the ball. They sub in a rookie who took 5 carries. Mason had 14. Had he not done that, he goes to 19. We go over the 18.5. We don't get that one. The next one was Justin Fields under 26.5 attempts. He went over by 1 stinking pass. There was 1 too many passes. Just missed on that. Had Van Jefferson under 1.5 receptions. I think he had 3. Of course, that's the week that they go to him. And of all the incompletions that were thrown by Fields, he had several to Jefferson. And really, the 2 tough losses were these teaser bets. We had Buffalo getting 7.5, a 6-point teaser that cashed. The 49ers minus 1.5. 49ers kicker gets hurt in the middle of the game. There was 2 separate drives where San Francisco was in field goal range and couldn't kick a field goal because they didn't have a kicker. They ended up losing by 1 point. Had they been able to kick one of those, they win by 2, and we cashed that one. And the next one was we took Cleveland +9 and New Orleans +11.5. Neither one of those had a chance. I don't have anything for anybody this week. I didn't feel good about anything this week at all. So we're sticking with just the system picks, and I'll have more of my picks for next week. But for now, we're just going to talk about those system picks, talk about what they do and what they can do. And remember, this system is based on efficiency. It is basically how much better is a team's offense than their defense allows the opposing team's offense to be. It comes down to points scored. How efficient is this team's offense compared to how efficient will the other team's offense be based on past statistics. That's what the system is, and that's what it comes down to. Now, if you've had an easy schedule so far, or your matchups were great, but you're not a great overall team, the numbers are going to be better than they should, and vice versa. It should even out and should get better as the season goes on. But the bad thing about the NFL is when the season goes on, there are more and more injuries, and the more and more injuries there are, the team kind of loses its identity. You saw that on Monday night with the Saints. They just did not look like the same team because I think they had 5 or 6 starters out. When you have that many starters out, it just makes a big difference unless you've got somebody that's a top 5 to 8 quarterback on the team. There really isn't much you can do as a team to be the same or to put up the same kind of numbers. So that's kind of how things go with the system. And that will do it for our episode this week of the Cherry Pickers. Let's hope for a good week here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 6 picks here. Full disclosure, the system did like Chicago over Jacksonville. We won't count that because I didn't get it out to you guys in time. It did like them over Jacksonville. That game, Chicago just mopped the floor with Jacksonville. I would not be surprised to see tomorrow there's a change in Jacksonville and a new head coach coming in because Shad Khan, he don't play around. He's the kind of guy that he's rich. He's a chance taker, and he's the kind of guy that would make a change at the head coaching spot. So that will do it for us this week. We'll be back next week at noon here on YSN on Sunday to try to give you some more system picks, and I'll be back with some more of my picks. So for Ryan Big Tree Oliver, I'm Gary Altizer. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Cherry Pickers on YSN. We will see you next week at the same time.
YSN thanks you for watching this presentation of Your Sports Network. For stories, stats, and